a shy day. Can I take that the minutes that Mahmouda put together, that you're happy with those? Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mahmouda. So we've agreed the minutes from the last meeting, and today Jonathan was going to introduce the session. So just as a little bit of background for those that you haven't attended before, the subject matter for these meetings are agreed by you. So we've set the next one, which will take place on the 6th of July, which is around youth unemployment. But it's really an opportunity to share some of the projects and ideas that are happening within the membership with other councils. And we're always really grateful when we have volunteers that say that they'd like to share what they're doing locally. So can I just thank Jason from Bristol and Fiona from Cardiff, who've not without any pressure at all agreed to speak on today's call. So if you're happy with that, so we're going to be talking about how the session's reimagining our high street. So with all of the changes, all of the effects that COVID's had over the last year, clearly there's big changes afoot about how people are using high streets, and what you're all going to, how you're going to repurpose those high streets to bring people back in. So I'm delighted to welcome Jason from Bristol City Council. Jason is the project manager for city centre and high street recovery. I'm going to share my, I'm going to allow Jason to share the screen, to share his presentation. Brilliant. So over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to get it set up correctly. Okay, good morning, everyone. So just a bit of context, I've been in Bristol since 2004, so just about 17 years now. The last 5 years I've been focused on city centre kind of physical regeneration. By the beginning of April, I was asked to move back to economic development, which is my background, to lead on city centre and high streets recovery. A city centre, plus we have 46 other high streets spread across the city, ranging from town, district and local centres. So this talk is about all of those locations, not just the city centre. So this is our city centre, quite a large spread out. The main shopping areas, an area we brand as Bristol Shopping Quarter, which includes Cabot Circus, which opened in 2008, and includes Broadmead and the galleries as well. Galleries is a 1990 scheme, Broadmead 1960s post-war built, and then we have a range of other locations within that area. City centre is our key regional destination. Obviously, it fulfills a role that's more important, for the whole of the region and nationally, not just for the city. So it's the key regional destination for work, leisure, tourism and investment. Obviously, that's going to be an important issue going forward. Around 44% of the jobs are normally located in the city centre. A lot of people not working in the city centre. That's going to have a economic impact on the associated retail, leisure, hospitality sectors. What we're aiming to build is an inclusive and open city centre for all. I think it's true to say that during the pandemic, other groups of people have come and taken over the city centre a little bit, and we're a bit concerned about some of those aspects. So we've had a lot of kind of protesting kind of activity. What we want to see is more kind of families and other people back into the city centre and using it. So kind of touched on already, the pandemic has severely impacted retail, hospitality, culture and tourism sectors. We need to support local businesses and employment, especially in the city centre. You look at Broadmead, which is our main area, footfall is down around 30% compared to what it was in 2019. Done quite well over this weekend with the sun out, as kind of Nicola's already touched on. And unfortunately, we have a rising property vacancy rate in Broadmead as well, so probably around 22% currently. We've lost, likes of Topshop and other Arcadia Group businesses, and we've seen our Debenhams close as well. True to say that the other high streets outside of the city centre, whilst obviously they've been impacted negatively by the pandemic, a lot more people are visiting those areas because people have stayed closer to home. So just going to touch on some things we've been up to and some things we've got planned. So we are going to be running or setting up a citywide grants fund to bring vacant commercial properties within our high streets back into use. So we're going to be setting aside £1.3 million for that, aiming to bring 130 properties back into use. Looking to grant people up to £10,000 to bring hopefully the properties back in on a permanent or meanwhile use. And then outside of that, we're having a focus on the city centre and 9 other high streets. So probably similar to most of you, we had an election earlier in May. Before the election, our cabinet members and the mayor announced where they're going to be focusing on. So it's the city centre and these 9 other high streets. So what they've done is chosen high streets of a different size, different demographics, different economic performance, and different geographic areas across the city. So what you've got there is a mixture of locations across the city, but they're listed in kind of size order. East Street in Bedminster was one of the initial Porter's pilots back in 2011. Church Road is to the east. I won't go through the rest of the details, but just kind of some examples. Many of them kind of really part of our most deprived communities, or definitely serving our most deprived communities. So just some of the things we've been focused on and continue to focus on is reopening our high streets safely. So in common with most of you, we've received reopening high streets safely / welcome back funding from Ministry of Housing, Communities, Local Government, which has been funded by the EU, which has come with a lot of constraints. Quite difficult to spend the money in a very quick way. Very difficult to be very responsive with it. We have used that funding to put a lot of support behind, engaging with businesses, actually going out, visiting our high street businesses, running webinars. So once a month we run webinars, talking businesses through the unlocking stages, making them aware of any financial support that's available. So just a couple of things on the slide. A lot of the kind of community feedback was people not really recognising how large a space 2 metres actually is. So there's a myth of 2 giants in Bristol. So we've gone with a kind of playful message: do the giant thing, keep 2 metres apart. And then kind of on more kind of serious note, we've produced operating guidance that our COVID marshals have taken to individual businesses on high streets as well. One things we're going to be doing is running a cultural programme that again is focused on the city centre and those other 9 high streets, aimed at getting people back out. We've done a lot to support outdoor hospitality, probably not to the same degree that Cardiff, I'd say, being a lot more proactive at setting up kind of hospitality kind of areas. We've been much more kind of focused on pedestrianising key parts of the city centre, known as the Old City and King Street. So we already had plans, particularly to pedestrianise the Old City, and what the pandemic has done is accelerated our plans to enable hospitality businesses to kind of trade out. So we've been running, or providing licenses under the Business and Planning Act that the government brought in. And then more recently, we've been invested in street scene and greening improvements. So these planters that you can see on the screen have thankfully replaced some horrible red and white barriers that were there previously. So that's a picture I took of Fortunately, we had a bit of rain on Friday, but it's a picture I took of Friday. Again, it's planters in the old city, and within a couple of weeks, hopefully those, flowers and plants will be blooming a bit more than they are now. But those are kind of some of the efforts that we're kind of taking. We have quite a history of business improvement districts in Bristol. So Broadmead was one of the initial bids that has been in place since 2005, just after the bids legislation came into place in this country. We now have 3 business improvement districts within the city centre, the latest actually starting today, which is known as Redcliffe and Temple bid. But the city centre bid have been doing a lot of branding work. They've run a whole Bristol Together campaign, and their latest campaign is Love Bristol. And as part of that work, they have put these hearts into 4 of our green spaces within the city centre. Got a lot of media coverage, that nationally and internationally. So this is a final slide. I'm happy to take any questions. So what we've been focused on is working across the council on reopening safely, kind of business engagement. We are going to be upping our business engagement resources even further. We've probably never engaged so many businesses in a kind of way that we have done, and it's been much more kind of positive than perhaps it has been in the past, despite obviously the negative circumstances in which we've all had to engage. Our mayor has given us £2 million worth of COVID capital recovery funding, and we are in the process of bidding for £2.725 million worth of funding from a programme that our combined authority is running called Love Our High Streets. And so the whole of April, we spent time putting the full business case together. That's going to the combined authorities committee at the end of June. And it's sounding really positive. So we'll be able to do a lot more of what I've talked about once I know we've got the funding in place. So what we're currently in the process of doing is doing the detailed project planning and building the core team. So basically what I've been asked to do is almost take a team of kind of from 0 to around 9 people. And also what I've recently been given is the council's whole kind of markets function. So what we're doing is lining the markets function with the wider city centre and high streets recovery and economic development going forward. And really trying to look at markets as kind of way of driving footfall going forward into the future as well. That's it from me. Thank you. Happy to answer anyone's questions.
Brilliant, Jason. Absolutely brilliant. Sounds like there's such a lot going on. Can I just open it up to everybody that's on the call, because this is your day job.
So just wanted to say one other thing there. I'm a kind of great believer in that high streets were already changing before the pandemic, and I think quite often senior people in my organisation, other media kind of believe it, or people believe what they read in the media that high streets are dead, and don't believe that at all. I think they're evolving and changing, and they were already before the pandemic. Obviously the pandemic is going to speed up a lot of those changes, but they still have a large role to play going forward, in my view. Anyway, final point really.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question for Jason? We can take questions for Jason and Fiona at the end as well. Gareth, do you want to kick off?
Sure. Is my microphone working?
It is.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason. And just to cut in, it may be one for a wider discussion after, but since there was a little bit mentioned, I'm particularly interested in the devolution discussions. So I saw that there's you got your application in for the combined authority, and I just wanted to ask either now or reflections after Fiona's presented on how you're feeling. Is that helping in any way in terms of accessing greater funding for the high street, or are the different levels of both mayors working well together to help revisit? I know there's obviously a lot of visioning planning been going on with Bristol, but just to say a little bit about the combined authority and the city at some point. Thanks.
I mean, I think from my perspective, they've had that money allocated for some time. I think what it's done is sped us up working with them to kind of bring that funding forward. But in reality, if we're going to make a real difference, even that sum of money is not great enough to kind of meet the need that now exists, if we're honest about it. So I think, you know, that's one for government and combined authorities to consider in a lot more detail going forward. And it's going to be the city centre where there needs to be most of the focus in terms of regeneration, economic development, from my perspective.
Thanks.
How do you go about finding what residents want in terms of how they want to use the city centre? Because you mentioned that it being taken over in terms of protests, which obviously hit the international news. Yeah. But what sort of process do you go through to find out how you might repurpose it?
One of the things I haven't talked about, but we have done a lot of resident engagement on, is we've got a city centre and retail and leisure study that's underway at the moment, and a lot of that is actually being, you know, telephone conversations with you know, visitors to the city centre, and as part of that we'll also be doing on-street surveys. But we do, again, it's not perfect, but we do a lot of we've got a quality of life survey that goes out on an annual basis asking for resident perceptions, and that includes questions about people's high streets or where they shop locally. We do a lot of social media activity as well. So yeah, a variety of ways.
Stephen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. That was really interesting. In Kirklees, we're kind of really interested in the prospect of housing and town centres as well. I guess there's two sides to that. One is the people who already live in those town centres, or like you said, the wider high streets, like village centres, and yeah, we've got lots of towns and villages as well in Kirklees. What's the engagement like with people who already live in those town centres, or people who already live kind of very close to those high streets? It's easier with villages, of course, because you kind of live right next to the shops and so on. But in city centres, yeah, what's that engagement like with people who already live there, and kind of how does that translate into plans for further housing in city centres and so on?
Again, it's kind of through a variety of channels, including through our, you know, ward members who kind of represent those areas, really. I think if we're honest, there's more we could be doing on that. I think we have, in normal times, we've got a large student population. So Bristol's got 50,000 students that attend both universities, and it's links with universities that we've already got in place but need to build on going future, and that's going to be interesting going forward as well from my perspective. Are there going to be the same number of students in the city going forward, or are they going to, you know, learn in different ways?
Yeah, sorry,
remains to be seen, I think.
Yeah, no, we've got the same kind of issue in our largest town. Huddersfield has a large university, lots of student accommodation that's increased a lot over recent years. So that's obviously, in terms of like the life of the town centre and the high street there and the offer that it has, what kind of impact is that going to have on it when people are no longer living in the town centre? As you say, a lot of them were students before. So how do we attract more people into the town centres as well?
Yeah, so if you look at Broadmead at the moment, where I focused in on kind of very monocultural retail at the moment, it probably needs more leisure uses, but it's got hardly anybody living there at the moment. So, you know, it would benefit from more people living there. As a city, we've got, you know, big housing waiting lists. We have a housing crisis. So we, you know, there's different policy reasons for needing to intervene, and, you know, our city centre and high streets has space that, you know, people could use. Or that we could redevelop for housing.
Great, thanks.
Okay, has anybody got any more questions for Jason, or shall we hear from Fiona and then we'll come back to questions afterwards, if that's okay? Brilliant, thank you, Gavin. Just one quick question. Could Matt Craighead, could you tell me what council you're from, please, and your job title?
Hi, morning. I'm from Bristol District Council. I'm the Climate Change Officer.
Brilliant, thank you. It's just so that I can get the minutes and the presentations to you afterwards.
Of course, thank you very much.
Brilliant, and welcome. Right, so I'm going to share my screen in theory. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, thank you, Nicola.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'll try not to be too annoying. Next slide, please. But
no, it wouldn't be fun if you didn't say that. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. So Greener, Fairer, Stronger is Cardiff's draft city recovery and renewal strategy. It went to cabinet last month. A lot of it will probably replicate what Jason has just talked about in Bristol, some of the observations that we've made. So I'll try and focus a bit more on the Cardiff-centric things. But yes, next slide, please, Nicola. So yeah, as Jason said, and as everybody knows, COVID-19 has changed cities massively. And it's important now that we sort of review the impact of COVID on our cities and on our previous plans, pre-existing plans prior to the pandemic, and think about how we need to revise those plans accordingly. So like I say, this draft strategy just provides the initial response and is just a starting point really for engagement discussion. And we certainly want to try and engage with as many people as possible, including seldom heard groups. And as we'll get into throughout the presentation, with children and young people a lot. Cardiff is in the process of applying to become one of the UK's first child-friendly cities. So everything that we do now, we're engaging with children and young people, not just through the youth council that we have, but also going out into schools. So that's very important to us going through. And as you can see from the bottom of the presentation, in the bottom right-hand corner, that is our child-friendly branding, as opposed to our sort of generic skyline that we have, which is lovely, but this is our more sort of child-friendly one. So point that out. Next slide, please. Yeah, again, as Jason said, there's been a huge impact on unemployment. It's pretty much doubled within Cardiff. We've had over a 100% increase in the number of claims for universal credit as well. So yeah, it's been quite catastrophic for certain people, and especially some demographics have been hit harder than others. The young who may potentially work are more likely to work in hospitality and events, and it's exposed existing inequalities as well between different demographic groups, different ethnic groups, and different parts of the city. At the peak of the pandemic, we had almost half the workforce working from home, 46%. City centre was virtually deserted. Many venues are still closed, unfortunately. There have been some changes to how we move around the city. There's been an increase in active travel, both walking and cycling. And we've used the opportunity to accelerate our cycleway scheme with cycleways across the city and creating a sort of a city centre look, hopefully, that people will be able to move around the city very easily without relying on cars or without even having to follow the road, so they can get places more directly. The city centre, when shops did reopen, we've seen demand return very quickly. Not just shops, cafes, restaurants, pubs. Demand has returned, so we're confident that people still want to go out, they still want to experience hospitality, and if we can be provided in a safe and managed way, then if you build it, they will come. Next slide, please. And brief slide in the UK context, kind of emphasize what I've said already. An overnight shift to home working and an acceleration shift to online retail, which, as Jason said as well, that was happening anyway, just an acceleration of that shift. But the city centre as an experience for people meeting, people coming in, you might do a bit of shopping, but you'll also eat, you'll also drink, you'll also meet friends. So as an experience, we're sort of, quietly confident that we can, enhance the city for those purposes. Also, away from the city centre, as Jason said again, sorry, I keep saying that, sorry, people have discovered their local, because Jason was right, that's what I'm saying. People have rediscovered their local district centres. I certainly have. I live about 2 miles from the city centre, and I discovered, you know, new paths, new footpaths, new shops, you know, new sort of small cafes that I didn't know were there before. So people are staying more locally as well. Unfortunately, though, existing inequalities have been widened, and the gap between rich and poor has increased, unfortunately, with both the financial impact and the health impact. Next slide, please. Internationally, we feel that, yeah, the news of death of cities has been greatly exaggerated. I think smaller cities have got opportunities. You know, larger cities, if they suffer from congestion and high population density, perhaps smaller cities have got the opportunity to take advantage of this now. Digital, yeah, again, we said before, that's been happening anyway. Hybrid working for the way forward, not whole scale working from home, and events, and very much curating cities to emphasize the local, emphasize the different, the unique, whatever is special about your city, so that cities aren't just identikit. And obviously kind of a no-brainer, but a momentum behind the green agenda as well. Next slide. We've got 10 key trends there. I think I've pretty much covered them all already, but that's certainly what we're aiming for. City experience and emphasizing district centres as well. Thank you. Next slide. We've got 2 aims of the strategy: recovery, sort of the immediate recovery issues. How do we support businesses and safeguarded jobs right now? And then with the renewal, looking a bit further into the future, how can we create more and better jobs and also make Cardiff a better city to live in and to visit? Thanks. Next slide. So I won't read all of this at all, but the immediate recovery issues are just about, you know, managing the city centre and district centres, encouraging footfall in a safe and managed way. So we've got, you know, city centre marshals, improved signage, improved wayfinding. As I mentioned earlier, adoption of child-friendly measures. So we're very much looking into just making the city centre somewhere that anybody would want to go to, or if you live there already, it's a pleasant place to be in. I'm probably preempting a slide coming up, but one of the things we're looking at is potentially bringing a beach sort of play park into one of our pedestrianised shopping streets over the summer. So that maybe next summer we'll see how things go with the Indian variant, but bringing those things that appeal to children into the city centre. District centres, we've been working on the public realm improvements, widening pavements, using planters that Jason had as well in his pictures, using planters to just make that space for people, pedestrians anyway, but also people at cafes and restaurants, that they're able to sort of sit outside and have the appropriate space around them. Again, investing in active travel, we've been built, you know, our cycleways that we've had across the city and linking them up and making sure that people can actually get from one district to another easily. We're also looking at Visit Cardiff is potentially going to be doing a campaign to not just visit Cardiff, but visit Cardiff neighbourhoods. So looking at the staycations and domestic tourism, attracting people to different parts of Cardiff, not just the city centre all the time. Employment support as well. We're going to continue with our economic task force, which is working with different parts of the council, schools, education, economic development, and benefits and advice services, bringing them together just to support businesses and individuals as much as possible to, as you say, support businesses and increase jobs. Events, running at test events. We've had the Eid celebration at Cardiff Castle as a test event. We also had Tavoil, which is a Welsh language event that takes place annually. There was a limited ticketed event for that in the castle grounds as well this year. Cardiff Bay, hoping to use the open space a bit better. We want to make more of our blue spaces as well as our green spaces. So we've had a beach down there for several years now, so that will continue and expand and just again make it more child friendly. Has to be safe, of course. So we're going to keep on rolling out the vaccination and Welsh Government's test, trace, protect system. And then business support, again, working with Welsh Government to provide that business support. The council so far has paid out £120 million, I think, in grants to 20,000 businesses. I believe those are the figures. sort of during the pandemic. So we're certainly going to be just continuing to provide whatever support businesses need. I'll let Nicola finish making a note. Sorry, thank you.
Next one.
Yes, please. So then for the renewal, we've identified 6 key missions listed there. Next slide, please. I'll go straight into them. These are hopefully the more Cardiff-centric things. Reimagine the city centre. As I was just saying, we want to improve both. We want to improve public spaces. So as I mentioned many times in this group, Cardiff Castle was opened as a public square last summer, whereas previously even the green space within the castle walls was you had to pay to get into. That's now a public square, and we're hoping to create some more public squares across the city. The space outside the castle was close to all traffic, and there was a cafe put on Castle Street there. And any businesses that were in the city centre and able to trade, they could provide a service there. There was an app that you were able to actually order food from the local businesses, and they could deliver to where you were sat. So that was a great success. We also want to try and improve, our green spaces, our blue spaces, or at least improve access to them, I should say. We've got a pedestrian street at the moment in Cardiff, just off the main shopping street, that's got a canal running underneath it. So we're going to be looking to expose that canal, create a new canal quarter. So hopefully then, attract cafes, restaurants, and again, just make it a much more pleasant place to be, We also want to complete a cycle loop around the city centre, just encourage that active travel. Also some pocket parks, it's a new term, pocket parks. But yeah, certainly just, I don't know the details of that, but small green spaces where possible. There's definitely a move to obviously increase access to green spaces from your home. There's a aspiration, not from the council, but a Welsh aspiration to have green spaces within 15 minutes, I think it is, of for everybody's home. We meet that very well in the more affluent north of the city. The south of the city, not so much. So we're hoping to sort of maybe be able to increase access to green spaces in the south of the city as well. I think that's all I'll talk about for this slide. Thank you, Nicola. Next one, please. A city for everyone. Again, this is about a child-friendly city, but also about making sure that Cardiff is someone who can all feel safe and welcome. During the pandemic, as I'm sure other places have seen, rough sleeping dropped dramatically. We opened up some hotels. We hired some hotels on a long-term basis to house homeless people in there, and we're certainly hoping that sort of downward trend in rough sleeping can continue. Our rough sleepers dropped from something like, I think we had 80 people per night sleeping on the streets of Cardiff in March, well, just before the pandemic, to around five entrenched rough sleepers. Those figures might not be exactly right, but it gives you an idea of the dramatic decrease that we saw. So we're hoping to obviously maintain that. And we want to sort of use this opportunity as well to address the long-term drivers of health inequalities. We want to deliver over 2,000 new council homes. Again, we have a significant housing waiting list, and we're now building new homes. We've delivered around about 400, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years, and we're hoping to accelerate that and continue providing, new sustainable, energy efficient homes for local people. We also are acting as an anchor institution within the city, and we want to help deliver the Living Wage City initiative. Over the last year, 19 businesses have become living wage within the city, taking the total to 125 approximately, something like that. But we're very much looking to continue that Living Wage City initiative and ensure that people are receiving a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. I think that's most of what I wanted to say about that slide. Next one, please. There's a lot of information on this page. So a city of villages is about, again, connecting our district centres, so that you don't have to go in all the way into the middle of the centre of the city to access the shops that you want, and also you can move between them very easily as well. So yeah, we're certainly looking to promote local and district centres, emphasising their, uniqueness, in their individuality. We want to celebrate diversity and culture of different parts of our city. Certainly around the Bay, there's affluent areas next to not so affluent areas, and we're looking to, record the history of the less affluent areas, but they're also the most diverse within the city. Work-wise, we're looking to, council workers are probably going to be working some days in the main offices, other days in remote hubs across the city, or at home. It will depend on your personal preference, but there'll be an opportunity to actually work in your local area, or work in a different local area if you wanted to for some reason. But certainly then that would increase the number of people in a local area, using the facilities in that local area, using the local shops, and just hopefully decentralize slightly where people are choosing to shop and where they're spending their money. I think that's all I want to say on that slide as well. Thank you, Nicola. Culture and sport, a massive part of Cardiff's appeal, I think anyway. And we know there's a huge demand for people to get back to, going to live events, going to theatres, going to gigs, going to watch matches, having that shared experience with other people. So we want to put culture at the heart of redevelopment. Prior to COVID, we're already trying to deliver a new 15,000 seat indoor arena. That is continuing, and that's going to be based in Cardiff Bay. So that work is continuing, and that should hopefully be the catalyst for supporting grassroots businesses, music venues within the city as well. Culture is a huge part of Cardiff, and we've got the BBC studios here, and lots of programmes. Casualty, Sherlock, are filmed within Cardiff. So, just want to sort of emphasise that and support those sectors. We want to embrace Cardiff's music city strategy, which is currently being drafted, I believe. We've got a music board, which is made of sort of council staff, but also leaders from the music sector across the city. And they've been meeting for about a year now, and they're sort of working together to develop this music strategy to ensure that we can actually incorporate music into our processes, into our planning. And we want to increase participation in sport across all levels. It's not just about performance, but also the participation. That's had a massive impact during COVID because being shut, so we want to certainly encourage that. Oh yeah, and we're looking into Cardiff being a host city for the 2030 Football World Cup with UK and Welsh governments, apparently, and delivering a new velodrome as well in the sports village, which is in the Bay as well. Next slide, please. Mission 5, Tech City. We're sort of looking towards encouraging tech and knowledge-based businesses to come into the city. We've already got a lot of businesses in the city centre, in the financial sectors and legal sectors, things like that. So we're looking to, continue that sort of expansion of those. We certainly want to work more closely with the universities in Cardiff. We have 3 universities here, and we have 70,000 students who live in the city in normal times anyway. I don't know the impact of COVID on that yet, but we certainly want to work more closely with universities in a more formal way, and then encourage the talent that we have in the city to remain in the city after their degrees. We want to improve transport links as well with between Cardiff and London, Bristol, Swansea, and other cities too. And Cardiff Parkway is going to be a new train station in the east of the city. The east of the city has been historically not very well connected. So this new train station will hopefully start to bring some investment into that area as well. I think that's all for that slide. Thank you. Only 3 more to go, I promise people. Sorry. Mission 6, One Planet Recovery. So we've got our policy, One Planet Cardiff, which is our environmental policy. It's the aim of becoming a carbon neutral city by 2030. We want to use this recovery, it's already happening, to create local jobs. We want to work with the planning and policy guidance to you know, be energy efficient, resource efficient, help to keep improve air quality. I think air quality improvements, you know, obviously improved a lot during the initial lockdown. We want to see how much of that we can maintain. It's increased a bit since there's more traffic on the road, but hopefully we can continue some of that work. We also want to sort of look at where we spend our money, and hopefully influence that way. And we're also looking to develop the infrastructure for electric vehicles as well, and hopefully expanding that across the city as much as possible. And we need to think about flooding as well, because Cardiff is on the coast, so we need to think about flooding and the increased risk of that in the future. And the Coed Cardiff programme, which is mentioned at the bottom on the right, Coed Cardiff is Cardiff Wood in Welsh. So we're looking to increase the tree canopy in the urban areas from 90% to 25%. And that's part of the Coed Cardiff programme. Next slide, please. Just thinking about it. I don't like engagement. There we go. So we've got engagement starting in a couple of weeks' time with Cardiff University, as you can see. This is very much being done in collaboration with Cardiff University. So they're going to be helping us with stakeholder engagement and online engagement, child-friendly programs certainly, and then specific engagement with seldom heard groups and other groups that might be affected by this in particular. And there's also come back to Cabinet later this year. And the very last slide is just a link to the draft document. I couldn't get that into white text for some reason. Very annoying, but that is a link to the document.
Oh.
That's it for me. Thank you.
I was just going to, thank you very much, Fiona. I was just going to click it and then put it in the chat, which I will do now.
Yep.
She says, hopefully. Okay, I will stop sharing, and that was brilliant. Thank you very much. 2 excellent presentations. Thanks there for claps from Gareth, if you can't see those on your iPad screen. So can I open the floor? If you're on 2 screens now with 26 participants. So if you'd like to either raise your hand or put your camera on and raise your real hand. So virtual or real hands, I'll take either. Can I take chair's prerogative first of all? One of the things that Jason talked about was how he's expanding a team from scratch. He's creating a team. Who is it that's working on all of this brilliant stuff in Cardiff?
This is primarily being led by the economic development team. And I think they're collaborating across the council. So I was speaking to the planning team, education team, youth services for the child-friendly aspect of it. And certainly speaking with my team as well in corporate policy.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. So Morgan, do you want to go, and then Georgina?
Hi there, thank you very much for your presentation. I found them both very interesting. Fiona, you mentioned about anchor institutions. I just wondered if you have got an anchor network currently in Cardiff, and Jason as well for Bristol, and how that's going, if you have, please. It's something we're just looking to set up in Cheshire West. It'd be interesting other people's experiences.
There quite possibly is one in Cardiff. This isn't really my area of expertise, so I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine there's something. We've certainly, I know that our commissioning and procurement team have done a lot of work sort of along the lines of the Preston model and that sort of thing. So I'm sure that there are conversations happening. I'm trying to work with universities, as I say, but I don't know the details, sorry.
Also, thank you.
So in Bristol, we have what we call a one city approach. So a lot of what we're doing, we're reporting up and engaging with. We have a one city economy board. So yeah, includes the universities and a lot of the key institutions within the city. So they've, on one of my slides, I had a picture of the economic recovery and renewal strategy, and that it's not just a council document, it belongs to that one city economy board. So yeah, very focused on partnership working.
Thank you. Georgina, and then Will.
Thanks, those are both really interesting. I had a question for Fiona about the hubs that you mentioned being kind of dotted around city. So those are for council workers, just council workers, the hubs.
Public services we're looking at.
Public
so
services.
we'll be co-locating with, I don't know for definite, but I'm guessing NHS, police, whether it put civil service, I'm not sure about that part, but yeah, public sector.
And did you kind of have hubs that existed like that prior to COVID across the city, or are those things that you set up specifically?
So we currently have community hubs across the city. They're predominantly in areas of sort of high council housing.
Sure.
And they provide sort of, benefits and advice services, interwork services, library services, for children, rhyme time, things like that you get in libraries. We have those already, and they're already being used as touchdown points for staff that have visiting requirements.
Right.
I don't know how much of that would be perhaps used for remote working. That might be the start of it, or whether it would be looking at, we've got existing libraries as well, whether it would be buildings that are owned by the council or other public sectors that we could then change into those co-working spaces. I don't know precisely, but we sort of look to have some in, not just in areas of council housing, but across the whole city. So it will require some partnership working, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you. No, just because I do a lot of work on climate change, and North Herts obviously is not a city, but we've got like 4 main towns, and we're quite a rural area. And from my perspective, thinking from a climate change perspective, I kept thinking about how it'd be really useful if people that don't like working from home, because we have staff from quite a wide, coming in from a wide area, the majority of whom traveling by car, it would be quite good to have hubs in like all of those little towns. Yes, that was interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a really, really good innovation. I'm not a big fan of home working, to be honest. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to go to, I say, the library, a hub, or some other building I haven't thought of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Will.
Hi, I'm Will from Buckingham Dagenham Council. Obviously, just want to awkwardly say, first of all, sorry if you heard some noise from me earlier when I didn't realise I was muted. Leading on from that, and slightly, I think, to the point Fiona was just making about the hubs potentially, we're doing lots of work here at the moment around social isolation, which we appreciated was an issue beforehand, but obviously has been quite exacerbated by the pandemic. But one of the things we're looking at is sort of how to, use the spaces we have for that, including our town centres. Say we're London Borough, so rather than having a city centre, we've got a couple of sort of high street areas. But I think Fiona in particular mentioned sort of some of the green space and so on in there, and potentially the hubs as well in the more residential areas. But to both of you, is there sort of thinking around, as well as providing that space, potentially what kind of goes into there and how you build that up, and how we replace some of the institutions that we've lost over the course of the pandemic and austerity before it, which took away some of those opportunities for people to meet?
Who wants to go first?
Jason, sorry.
Do you want to go first, Fiona, and then Jason?
Yeah, I think it's very important just to improve that kind of local feeling and enhance the local areas, so we can actually stay within the same area and you're able to do all your shopping and working and whatever it is from that area. And as well, I said, but greening the spaces, not just greening our street spaces, but also increasing pocket parks and increasing the tree canopy as well. So it's just about looking at ensuring that everything is provided within the one area, and hopefully being able to meet everybody's needs. Sorry, does that answer your question? Maybe not, sorry.
It kind of, I think it's obviously different, potentially different at stages of it. Like you say, there's an element of if you build it, they will come, which I imagine is part of the green spaces and so on, rather than the thinking of what's in there at the moment if you're developing that. Yeah.
Jason?
So was your question really about work hubs as well, or was it really,
It can be as places for people in the community to sort of be and come in. I think one of the things I picked up on open green spaces is that, there's no sort of barriers to entry there, so people can come in without necessarily having a thing there. But if there are elements of building this, of bringing people in, not just for shopping, but for, more explicitly chances to meet and build community.
So, yes, you know, greening, putting in pocket parks, more trees, planters, those kind of environmental enhancements, key part of what we're trying to do in an effort to try and get people back. It's true to say that a number of our kind of high streets already got parks in them as well. So we're looking at how we develop the links between those parks and the green spaces that we've already got. But I think you touched on briefly on, you know, hubs, places to work as well. We've had you know, even before the pandemic, we had people looking at space above shops, above other kind of businesses, looking at how they can bring those spaces back into use for, you know, creative workspace. And that's, again, something we're continuing to focus on. And then, you know, how do we link those spaces up with other public services, such as libraries, is the kind of other thing that we need to consider.
Okay, should we move on to, you happy with that, Will?
Yeah, right, thank you.
Yeah, can we move on to Paul from Tameside, please?
Hi, sorry, my camera's, I'm having difficulty with this laptop. So all it was, where we're based, we're east of Manchester, one of the 10 combined areas, 10 authorities in Greater Manchester. And it's just to put forward the challenges we've got, really. So we've always been a borough that's predominantly got 9 towns written on the letterhead, 9 towns here, 9 towns there. Always had a principal town, which is Ashton under Lyne, but we have difficulty, especially in progressive sort of thinking from an elected member point of view, around either investing heavily in one town or making decisions which then don't progress very well because of resistance, because members in a certain area are reluctant to see their area not get funding, if you see what I mean. And we've had Town Centre Challenge come from the combined authority, Andy Burnham, the mayor, and that didn't have much bite. And it was the town that was selected. I mean, not much budget, not much has actually happened for the last sort of 2 or 3 years with that area. I'm just wondering whether or not, I know your city regions, and obviously Manchester would be our city, but from our local area, I mean, it looks on the maps and what you've shown that you have got pockets of different areas that you are trying to meet the needs of in a variety of ways. Just that sort of, not resistance, but just that sort of approach that you need to be taking, or what you have taken so far, to try and I think the mindset of a lot of our members is that they potentially still want to see town centres like they were in the 80s or the 90s, which is hard to get them out of that sort of mindset, really. And with a digital agenda that's coming in the environment, and we've had a peer review of healthy spaces and active travel. I mean, does some of this ring true with maybe challenges that some of your seniors are facing around buy-in from elected members, around making sure that either you're cutting the cake evenly, or more funding goes into some areas?
And from my perspective, apart from the city centre, the members and the mayor have really kind of decided where they want to focus.
Right.
And reality is we've got 47 high streets. So
yeah.
We've talked about 4.75 million. You can do the maths. It's,
yeah.
You know, we're never going to do everything across the city. But what I'm hoping is that the focus on those areas will kind of generate some interest from other areas to learn from that approach and adopt it themselves. And then I think the other thing that's jumped out for me is we all need to get better at measuring the economic benefit of what we're doing with this kind of city centre and high street interventions.
Definitely, yeah.
So in terms of putting our full business case together, it was quite a challenge to kind of little kind of evaluation work done on the success of any grant schemes that people might have run, even in terms of bringing empty properties back into use. But also any kind of greening public realm kind of investments. How do you measure the actual business and economic benefit? So I think, yeah, some of that challenge is kind of back to us, really, at getting much better at monitoring and evaluation the success of these programs, so that we can then say, you know, make the case for more investment.
I think what we've had locally is just a lack of overall buy-in, which then just seems to put the brakes on things. I've been in this post 7 or 8 years. I'm more policy based, but I'll work a little bit with some of the scrutiny panels as well, and they'll look at certain areas, and it's just over 5 or 6 years. It's actually what's been delivered, and are we still having some of the same conversations we're having yes, we've had COVID and that's put a lot of things on the agenda now, and pushed it right up there. But from a progression point of view, it's just at our local level, it's just making sure that, and I think some of that, what you've just said around making sure that if you're putting business case forwards, if you're going to be doing active monitoring of the influence and the impact and the cost and benefit, things like that, then that's a way forward really. And it might need to be segregated between areas, especially for us. It's so complex where we are, very dominant Labour-led authority, where they're trying to meet the needs of too many individual areas within the borough. Thank you for that.
Hi, Rachel from Preston.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to, or good afternoon. I just wanted to ask a question about community involvement in the plans that have been discussed, because you've talked about a lot about community engagement, but I wonder whether there'd been any involvement, slightly more active involvement in raising community finance, for example, to support some of the redevelopment projects, and whether that strategically is an approach that you have or that you might consider. And just having listened to Paul from Tameside, I'm reminded, because I actually live in Bury rather than in Preston, and I know that this issue of towns within a borough feeling that they're not getting the attention that perhaps the dominant town is getting is playing out a lot in local politics. And in the Radcliffe area of Bury, for example, in the last elections, most of the seats went to the Radcliffe First Party, their independents, and something similar I know has happened in Oldham, in the Failsworth area. So interestingly, though, in Radcliffe, they've been very active at a community level and actually have a community benefit society that has invested in raising the finance to rerun the Radcliffe market. So is there an opportunity in this discussion to think about how communities themselves can mobilise and be encouraged to mobilise to invest in their local areas?
I think definitely as part of the work we're going to be doing, we definitely want businesses working together much more effectively as a collective and representing their communities. So at the moment, a lot of them kind of work very much independently of each other. So what we want to be able to demonstrate is what could be done when they come together and kind of focus on actions together. So at the end of the day, currently they're all spending their own individual money, maybe on marketing or waste. But what could be done when they come together more kind of collectively? Some of the other kind of things about members of the community, yeah, they're going to come up with ideas and other more creative ways of delivering things than we're ever going to do as a local authority. So yeah, it's a key part of what we're going to be doing going forward is kind of, really engaging and involving people in, developing the cultural program that they want to see in their local area.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. I think, community involvement is absolutely vital to this, and I would hope that we could perhaps build on sort of the improved communications perhaps we have with local areas, with the mutual aid groups that have sprung up all over the place. Communities have come together during this time, and hopefully we can build on that and keep that going.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. Gareth has asked, do either of your cities have access to data that has shown the impact of local neighbourhood high streets rather than city centre from the increased localisation of the pandemic?
Not that I've seen, possibly.
I mean, we work with our city centre bid and some of the, even there's been a localisation even of the city centre. So people are visiting it, but they're not travelling from so far away to visit it. So obviously its catchment area has shrunk. Don't have any data, but it's kind of clear to see really from just walking around areas that some of the local high streets are more busier than they've ever been.
There's a question from Stephen Bonnell from Kirklees, saying that do you want to make the point, Stephen, or do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, sure. I'll sort of, I guess it was more building on some of what Paul said about the experience in Tameside, that we've got a similar experience in Kirklees, where we're a collection of two big towns, Huddersfield and Dewsbury, and then various villages, Holmfirth and Batley and so on. And each of those has very unique identities, so feelings are quite strong about growth being very important in those individual areas. And for us, early engagement of elected members has been really important, but also that kind of positive vision. So we've got these blueprint documents that kind of show the pictures of what Huddersfield will look like in the future, potentially what Dewsbury will look like in the future, and help to sort of provide a positive vision. But I think what's really important there as well is they're also realistic about how long it will take to deliver. And I find that elected members, at least in Kirklees, kind of like that balance of like, there is the ambition there, but also a bit of realism, you know. So for us, that's something that's really helped, I think, with some of the kind of tensions that that Paul spoke about in Thameside. I do have a question as well for Fiona, if I can tack it on to the end. You mentioned housing a couple of times, and I guess it's kind of on my mind because we're thinking a lot about the role of housing in tackling inequalities locally, and the role of housing on health inequalities, educational inequalities, and so on. And I'm just wondering kind of how you see the role of housing. Is that something that's seen as really important? Is it very high priority? I mean, you've got quite ambitious housing targets. So I think it was 2,000 new council homes and 4,000 sustainable homes, that's quite impressive. So it seems like there's a lot of capacity and resource going into that bit. So yeah, I'd just like to hear more about that, if possible.
So we've got the Cardiff Living Programme, which is basically since 2017 that's been up and running, and the aim is to deliver 2,000 new council homes over that whole period. We're predominantly sort of looking at sort of the smaller areas, perhaps small sort of I don't work in planning, by the way. I'll say brownfield, that might not be completely accurate, but what I mean is the sort of smaller sites that the big developers won't go for, where you might get 50 houses on there, 60 houses on there. Some of them have got 9 houses on there that we've done, for example. And we've been able then to work with a company in partnership with a company, and they've been able to develop those smaller sites that way. We've also we've been building sort of new skills as part of the Welsh Government's 21st Century Schools programme. So we've moved the site, then we've got a bit of land left that we own, so we can put houses on those sites, things like that. But it's been very much focused on the smaller sites that wouldn't be built on otherwise. And yeah, we're sort of looking at targeting of the housing waiting list. We're not just renting for selling as well, to affordable, and making the houses affordable, making them energy efficient, so we're not, housing somebody and then they're crippled by fuel poverty, and also looking to build infrastructure into the neighbourhood as well. So again, you're not building somewhere everyone has to drive to the nearest shop. So yeah, I think housing is very important for Cardiff, and particularly with the inequalities that we've got. We've got a very wide gap between north and south and city inequalities, and looking at targeting that and regenerating some of the neighbourhoods in the south. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, that focus on the smaller sites that's really interesting, I think, rather than just trying to do the big ones. The kind of the role of fuel poverty and everything in the housing, I think, is really important as well. That the impact that it has on people, and creating further inequalities if the housing isn't high quality as well, because you could bash out 10,000 rubbish homes and
exactly
it would look good on paper for a couple of years, and then it would start to impact on people's health and the budgets and things like that. So that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a little tour a couple of years ago, I think, for the Executive Oversight Committee of the network when they came to Cardiff, and we were able to go into one of the show homes. And it was interesting actually that it was built on a very small estate that had mixed private development houses and the council development houses. And the council ones were actually slightly bigger, slightly nicer. They had level access from the front to the back for anybody in a wheelchair. And they were actually, they were just slightly nicer and better in some ways than the private ones. I was very surprised about, but pleasantly so.
Yeah, good. Oh, good. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Does anybody have any final questions for Jason and Fiona? No. Can I just formally thank Fiona, who was sort of press ganged into speaking today, who did very well. Thank you very much indeed, taking somebody else's presentation. Nobody would have noticed. Jason, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I will, if you can, Jason, if you can send me your presentation and I'll circulate that with the minutes. Rachel's put a note in the chat for a session that Preston are doing Wednesday next week. What if communities owned the high street? I have put that in the officer group chat and it is in the monthly newsletter. Hopefully that will go out in the next couple of days. If anybody doesn't get the monthly newsletter and you would like to receive it in your inbox, if you email me at comms@councils.coop, and I will add you to the MailChimp list. Just a few extra things. If you're not already, if your council isn't already represented on the Executive Oversight Committee or the Values and Principles Board, we will be, because of the fallout from the May elections, there are some vacancies on both of those. So if you are on the distribution list, you will get the email to say, would any councillor like to put their names forward? So as an officer of the network, and you want to have a chat with me about it, or you've got somebody in mind, please do get in touch. We've got a couple of events coming up this month. I haven't got the dates for them. One of them is the long-awaited launch of the asset transfer report that was begun by Newcastle City Council and finished off by one of our affiliate members that brought it up to date with current thinking and of course the impact of COVID. That will happen this month. And the leaders group and cooperative leads group have asked that we organise a session on mutual banking. So I've got Bank Cambria from Wales. These are the organisations that I'm trying to get a convenient date in the next couple of weeks. Avon Mutual, Northwest Mutual, Greater Manchester Mutual and Southwest Mutual. I think that will be a good session as well, and that will be open to everybody. So please look out for the mailing on that. My fourth point, 5 points. But fourth one is, if you've got any case studies that you want us to get onto the website, we've got over 300 case studies. All of the stuff that you were talking about today is so of the moment, so appropriate that if you would want to send me a case study, please do, or you want to find out more about how to do it, again, please do. And finally, we got Lewisham Council into membership last week. So we now have 100 councils, associate members, affiliate members, so opposition groups, town and parish councils and supporters in the network. I did get a note from Steve Reed, who's our honorary president, to say that we are definitely the fastest growing network in local government. So as the Shadow Secretary of State for Local Government, if he says that, then it's got to be true. Is there anybody that wanted to add anything before we close the call? Or the next call, sorry, is Tuesday the 6th of July and it's on youth unemployment. I did say that right at the start of the meeting. It was something that was asked for. I don't have any volunteers yet to talk about projects that are taking place on youth unemployment. So I will be sending notes out, but if you are doing something that you think should be shared, or you know something that another member's doing that you think should be shared. And then the August meeting, which happens on the 3rd of August, I have had a request from Kirklees that they could do a presentation. They couldn't come, Jonathan Nunn couldn't come to today's call, but he's really keen that they share the work that they've been doing on reimagining the high streets. I think it's going to be such a live issue for everybody going forward, that unless anybody says they don't really want that to happen, or if somebody says, oh, I'd like to share what we're doing at the August call, we could have another couple of presentations in August. That would also be very welcome. So I will finish the call, and thank you all very, very much indeed for coming along today.